Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Aaron here. Welcome back to the channel. I'm talking today with Ian Rafalco, son of Dr. Eric Berg. How are you doing, Ian?
Doing all right.
So I did a video recently calling out, well, your dad and
Yeah.
Grant Cardone. It was really an excuse to kind of troll the both of them. And there were so many people in the comments like, oh, you need to talk to Dr. Berg's son left Scientology. You need to talk to Ian. And you and I have never spoken on my channel, although we've been in touch for a while. So,
Yeah.
and then you texted me and it was perfect. So here we are.
Yeah. I thought, we had done some stuff earlier. The emotional toll that leaving Scientology takes, I gave myself the time that I needed. I was like, I can't, push myself to do this thing that I wasn't ready for. And then I was like, it just hit me one day. I was just ready. And leave, the past times I talked about it, I was still very shooken up. I didn't really understand, what was going on. I was sort of like joining the flow without sort of figuring my own particular situation out. And then and I did that. It took a year. I can tell you that my past is like now so much clearer, and I educated myself. And it's like the more I learn about just general injustices that I had been shielded from, it just lights a fucking fire under your ass, and you just like you start to tap your foot. The days are going by and nothing's changing on their level. That's not even necessarily true, because the tree has been shaken and the leaves are falling. And I'm not going to sit around anymore. I'd prefer to give the people an honest, more reasonably realistic story, rather than, oh, well, I had this 3 years, it went bad, and then I left. It's like, no, like Scientology corrupted my childhood and the way I processed things and the way my parents taught me. And it's like, these people have done way too much, I think, for me to keep it to myself. I want to like share more of my side, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you first publicly came out of Scientology, it was in a video that you posted to TikTok that got a crap ton of views, millions of views, I think. You came out sort of with a bang, but you said a moment ago, you said you took a year. Does that mean it was a year since you first publicly put up that video?
A little more. I remember passing the year mark and realizing that how much time had passed. And I came out about my dad because there's so much context and so many different stories to tell. I needed to get my truth out in a way that people would actually give a shit. So who do they give a shit about? They give a shit about the keto man, my father, who's not really the man who he portrays himself to be, honestly. And he does things out of malicious circumstance. And when I ask him why do you act in a way that sort of everything else is beneath you? And it all goes back to Scientology. My parents were probably the biggest reason I left Scientology, because of just their mental state, especially my mother. I remember the thing that set me off. My dad recently, within the past 2 years, bought this like massive farm in Virginia, dumped well over a few $1 million into it. Remember, we were driving back. It was like a long ass drive. So we were driving back from me just visiting it. It's a lot of him gloating, a lot of him being like, all my exploitation pays off, all my overcharging for those supplements, and like taking the yearly test to be a chiropractor just so he can still hold the title. He's not a real doctor. So he has to do those sort of like rudimentary things that these people have to do to sort of like pretend to be legitimate. We were driving back and he was talking about how well he was doing at the org. Or with the church, and how well he was doing on sales. And he was like, man, my reputation is absolutely bulletproof. I don't know what, something about that just like ricocheted through my entire childhood. Just like this egotistical man baby who spends 11 hours a day on YouTube was telling me how he had some like superior, this man didn't graduate from any medical college. Or like real, like he doesn't know like virology, he doesn't know any of these other things. These are a YouTube search away for him and where he gets his data. But
I'm not even familiar with his content beyond knowing that people consider him to be like the opinion leader in regards to the keto diet. Anyway, how does he where does most of his money come from? Is it selling supplements?
Yeah, so he followed the money on that one. He got into keto when it started becoming like a big fad, and then he would just like put all of his chips into that basket when he saw the return. Also, because it's like a very simple diet, it's like not hard. He was like, "Well, I'm just gonna make my own set of supplements, and I'll say that they're all specifically designed for keto." And that's what I was also instructed to say when I trained his current sales team. Oh, I don't know who's there now, but when I worked for him, he had keto consultants, and I was there. I was the QA. I was the director of QA, so quality assurance, and I was maintaining all these keto consultants, right? Using Scientology completely, because that's why I was hired. Where was I? He loves to talk about how incredible his profit margins are because people trust him because he gives out so much free information. Like he makes YouTube videos and like pamphlets and says, "Oh wow, it's all free." From his perspective, this gives him the right to immensely with his products. And his data changes. He sometimes forgets that he's already covered a topic, so he'll research it and found out he's already made one. And despite all of his boasting, he has like physically, he has aged like 10 years in the past single year. And I am just so interested to know like what management told him or what his son being an SP has done to his sort of inner Scientology social life. Because he was the OTC chair deputy of the Americas, because my mom was the OTC chair. So she ran the OT committee, which is like, obviously for people, is like the group of whatever Scientologist has that much free time to work with other Scientologists to like set up events or community propaganda seminars or whatever.
Yeah. What do you think? Why does your dad do so well in this keto space if he's not particularly an expert? Like he's known as an expert,
Yeah,
but you're saying
right.
he really just researches on the fly. Why does he do so well in this space?
He breaks things down. He wants to basically dumb down the subject as much as possible to communicate to the lowest common denominator of person. He'll take something like cholesterol and be like, cholesterol, not what you think. Eggs, not bad. Eat eggs. I eat 5 eggs a day or whatever he says. It's like,
so he's not actually an expert in the subjects he's discussing, but he's good at taking information and explaining it in a way that's easy to understand.
Yeah. He relies mostly on that because he lacks a lot of good marketing skills. Anything that people keep coming back to, he just doubles down. You know, he's had quizzes that he's used. He's actually still reusing old videos that he took years and years and years and years ago, and just recycling the same information. I think AGM does that for him. AGM does his marketing. And I mean, that's like a whole other, I could talk about the company and my relationship with that company in a whole nother video. But
well, let me ask you this. You had mentioned that some of the people who've been watching your content, you know, comment that they've decided they don't think you're being honest or they don't believe what you're saying.
Oh,
what is it that you've said about your dad that people are calling into question?
It ranges. I mean, it ranges from, you know, people being like, "Oh, I don't believe that he gives his money to Scientology." Like, how could someone who's so nice on YouTube do anything for a malicious nature? And my favorite part is that he does that thing that many Scientology influencers do, and it's pretend to be Christian, not in a public, avowed way, but if you look at his comments, God bless you. Christ is with you. You are sent from the heavens. I actually have an email saved where he sent me, he was bragging because he had a comment that said, he sent me a comment that said, "Oh, it doesn't get any better compliment than this." And someone literally saying that she worships him like a god by word.
So he actually responds to people in a way to make them think he's a Christian.
That's one of the you know, because he knows it's like a lot of susceptible people. He doesn't believe in God at all. He once told me that he was one of the beings who designed bodies when they were made. he was there, putting the pieces together, and he was like, it's all got to make sense. And I'm like, I guess I just didn't know enough about the body at the time, like anatomy, period, to ask a simple follow-up question. But like, this is what he believes. He thinks that he was sent from some, like he built them so he can fix them, but then doesn't follow the rules of medical science. It's an interesting philosophy.
So that's why he's such an expert, because billions of years ago, he was the one that helped design the structure and the endocrine systems and the hormone interactions. That's why he knows the right keto recipe for your meatloaf.
Yeah, and he gets this he has this routine now, this cycle sort of. He kind of figured out like, his plan, which he can now kind of apply to like any bodily issue. Like, oh, well, your problem is because you have inflammation, and you have inflammation because you eat sugar. So cut out the sugar, get on keto. It's like every kind of problem he kind of relates to his plan being the best. And well, just put him on the basic plan.
What are a few of the most important things that you want to discuss? What do you think is most valuable for you to talk about?
My story is the same as everybody else's. Maybe I had a different relationship with my parents, which influenced a lot of my need to leave. But like, it was the same as most other second generation Scientologists. The isolation, there's like a bullet point list of how I realized and how I woke up from Scientology. And there's just a lot of tiny things that just kind of proved what I had denied for so many years. Like, I fought against all that. I wanted to be someone who like could laugh in the face of these allegations of Scientology. And I thought I had my head on pretty straight. You start entering logic into your everyday routine, and that will directly conflict with the Scientology process. And, the more you learn, the less it makes sense. I was terrified to do my OT levels because my mother had been an OT 8 for years, and she was a incredibly unbalanced person, like a very spiteful, hateful, very closet racist, which caught me off guard even. But, she's got a very private, like sort of violence inside of her that I feel like I was sort of blaming on myself. Because you have overts. Oh, well, that's why you're critical. I'm sure, you could have handled it better, which, yeah, I could have handled being in a cult better if I had known fucking at any point in my goddamn life. I remember being a child. This is such a bizarre memory. I remember getting this off in one of my one of my many sec checks I had while I was at Flag. I remember, it's so morbid that I was looking at it before in a different light, but it was I was a child, and I was walking into the Fraser Mansion because I grew up in the DC area, like in Northern Virginia. So like the DC org was like my org. And I remember walking into the Fraser Mansion as a child, and there was a person outside who handed me a little pamphlet from a little basket, and the pamphlet had a big alien head on it, and it was like in this black folded up thing, and it was like talking about this. Somebody just handed it to me, and I was like, okay. But like, I brought it inside, and I couldn't even read. I was like so incredibly young. I didn't really know what I was looking at. It just said like Xenu and blah blah, and I was like, oh, this doesn't look weird. This is weird. And somebody took it away from me, and I got in trouble for that. I couldn't even read. I remember my mom making it seem like people who talk shit about Scientology are bankrolling. I was like, oh, that's scary. It was just a funny afterthought to see like this world that she had to paint for me to kind of show me how wrong I would be for leaving or how awful. But then again, the church is still asking for her money. So she's still bankrolling them, getting scammed. And, he and my dad is scamming. Well, he's selling the vitamins. Selling vitamins is selling vitamins. It is what it is. But like, just the attitude that he has behind it. He like actively is trying to set up a foreign office so that he can say that he lives in a different place, kind of a tax haven sort of situation. He wants to set up an office out of the States to sort of be run by nobody. have a couple people employed there to just like keep the lights on so that he can have even higher profit margins. It's his motivation towards the whole thing that kind of like steamrolls over people with actual problems who don't agree with him. It just doesn't matter. You know, he doesn't give a fuck. If you don't agree with him totally, he's not even going to take the time of day to grace you with his attention or his presence. He pays people to tell his critics to fuck off.
You know, the supplements industry in general is such a shady, fraudulent, lucrative industry. I mean, some of my favorite YouTube channels are channels where experts actually break down what's really in these things and what they really do and all this kind of stuff. And maybe one of the reasons your dad is successful in this industry is he puts a very trusting, friendly, I don't know, you might say attractive face on a shady, lucrative industry and makes out like a bandit, you know? I think anyone tuning in, to you for the first time would probably have two major questions or reactions. Like, one, first, oh shit, Dr. Eric Berg's a Scientologist. There's so many people who the video I did wasn't even about him. The video I did was about a report that your mom wrote on Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
And
that was a great one.
And yet so many of the comments were like, oh my God, I've been following Dr. Berg for years. Now I'm going to unsubscribe because I'm not willing to support Scientology. So the two responses would be, oh my God, Dr. Berg's a Scientologist. I can't believe it. And their second question is most likely to be, well, you're his son. You grew up in it. What on earth made you leave? Was it some single horrible thing? Was it a lifetime of abuse? Was it more due to Scientology as a subject or more due to your parents as people? And it's really hard to answer any question like that in 5 minutes or 5 hours. But what would be the headline for you? Like, the reason I left, because it's also not just one reason, but it's
very hardly one reason. Yeah.
But how would you address that question?
I was just done. Like, I was sick of it. Like I'd sort of been targeted because I was different, I guess, as a child. I, sort of expressed certain signs of certain like behavioral patterns, I guess, that my parents didn't like. I on my journey of figuring out like what was happening with me, I realized that I more than likely have been on the spectrum for autism. So, but I lack the money to get that like confirmed with a doctor. But many, many, many signs, just for me specifically, it's a very personal thing, obviously. But, there was a lot of shock when I was learning about like what help I could have had, or like, these things, these behavioral things that I had as a kid. I couldn't explain it. And my entire life, I'd sort of attributed all of these mental facilities or behavioral patterns to like something broken from before, mainly because of how my parents treated me. It was, you are upstat or you are a DB, a degraded being, which is completely hot or cold, like night and day. In the Berg household, you are upstat or we canceled your birthday, which I actually found a report my mom had written to the HCO of DC. I think it was like 12 or 13 or something. And I kept taking the house phone to talk to a girl that I had met online. She lived in some other state. I didn't have any other friends, so I would just like talk to this girl, and I wasn't allowed to use the phone during nighttime, but she caught me a couple times. And then apparently, I mean, I don't remember exactly that whole time. Is a little fuzzy for me, but I read in the report that she said, well, he's been taking the phone. He's not listening to me. So we will no longer be celebrating his birthday this year. My mother is not a well person. And I had been kicked around a lot and put through the ringer. I have a million examples, but it's a long road of being the punching bag and sort of being socially held hostage by my family, and also their status. My status is their status, so I can't make them look bad, obviously. I was a very like reserved, beaten down person. So when I got to the bottom, I became very bleak. and I saw not very many ways out. So I, wanted to end it. And I wanted to get my story out before I did that. All that aside, I didn't expect it to explode. I expected somebody to find it and I would be long gone by then. But the pain turned into anger. I feel this thing that I was, bullied over my entire life isn't even a thing. It's like I've been staring at a painting of a Ferris wheel, thinking I'm on the ride, and in reality, I'm on not a fucking Ferris wheel.
When you say the thing you've been bullied over, do you mean Scientology?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Any inability to communicate effectively or learn or
you mean being bullied by your parents?
I mean, essentially, through most of my interactions as a Scientologist, the terminals that I work with have I've arrived to them like by negative connotation, and then they're usually like, oh wow, he's such a bright kid. I had a lot of pre-recorded personalities to kind of play the part of guy who's fitting in really well. I went to training at Flag. I was there. I was told I was supposed to be there for 4 months. I was there for 11 months. And half of that was spent in ethics because I had met a girl and that was a whole messy scenario. I met a girl who I thought was really cool. We had a lot in common, and I was like, oh, cool. I've had a lot of friends that were girls, so it was like no problem. I'm like, I'm on training. I'm not going to get in a relationship, but she's cool. People just wrote reports on us. We were too interested in each other's conversations, so they wrote reports on us, and they just spread rumors. And the entire Flag building was like watching us, and we were separated just for being friends. And that actually became the catalyst for my interest in her romantically. We were two like neglected children in a cult. They sec checked me a lot when they were like, we want to get the truth out of you. And I was like, okay. They're like, do you find her attractive? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, do you want to date her? I was like, well, it's not something you should do on the program. So I was just going to be your friend. And they didn't like that answer because it sounded too simple. It was too direct. Eventually, after everyone had, was up my ass about it, I started to say, well, I might as well see what's up. So we eventually got together. Once she left the program and, we were given permission to be in a relationship, now that she was gone, she came back to the program, which I guess she wasn't supposed to do.
Were you still there or you were already gone?
Yeah, I was still there. She came back a few months later and they saw us holding hands and I guess, they knew we were being romantic with each other. And I guess people above my MAA didn't like that. So they overrode his previous decision and separated us again. During that time, this is an acronym that I hate that I still remember, but the DFCCIPO for OOTs. She's like head bitch of all the Flag training and
who was it, by the way?
Kira Stanzani. I think her name is Schumacher now because she got divorced. She was so personally upset by the concept of me having a romantic interest in anyone. And it was like the way she worded it, she was personally hurt. But even in how she described it to me in person and just the whole air, I had this running joke that she actually was jealous and she wanted me to join the Sea Org so that we could be together. And I'm very sorry, but she was not my type. So if you see this, Kira, my bad. But yeah, so she comes back. We get all the ethics actions you can physically give someone. We didn't do anything dishonest. They just decided to offload both of us. So she was offloaded. And that night, she was supposed to leave because they got her the flight 4 a.m. the next morning. I proposed to her. And it was like,
and she went back to Australia, right?
Yeah, we were long distance for like almost a year, and she came to visit, and it was fine. And then she had to leave again, and then I went to visit her. And before I went to visit her, there was a period of time where I went to Flag. I was on staff at Atlanta, and I was a trained HGC auditor in Atlanta, class 5. So I was doing like a lot of NED for the staff because there were no public. I kind of was only doing staff. I would go home and I would just be just horribly depressed and just like I started drinking and it's an unhealthy amount and then I stopped. I wasn't doing well. So I was like, I'm going to go do superpower because I meet all the qualifications for that. Because even after I went clear, my problems did not go away. I fight to go to Flag because I'm saying I'm literally like dying. I worked it out so that Ruby, my wife or my fiance at the time, could go to Flag at the same time. And so we could get married and then I could do Superpower. And her family runs the org in Perth, Australia. They thought that they could send her out there and she could get some training and that would be a good justification. You know, they could finish up her training. We came together and then we got married and, you know, she got auditing while I was trying to do Superpower. And then I was in session. I had this cognition. You know, I feel like staff isn't really, you know, my lifetime purpose. I feel like my lifetime purpose is like to be a writer, a filmmaker. I love, you know, the idea of creating like a world and creating stories. My auditor didn't like this because I said staff wasn't my main purpose. And then she wrote that up. I was taken off Superpower. And for 5 months, I was told to remain in the Superpower in the Fort Harrison, either only being in my room or making amends. And
this is all because you said that you didn't think staff was your purpose.
Yeah. I also said was like, well, I'm not going to quit because I signed the contract.
So you weren't saying that you wanted to leave. You weren't saying that you were going to leave. You just said, it's not really my purpose. And they take you off Superpower and now you're in 5 months of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
What was the basis for the lower condition if you weren't saying that you wanted to leave?
It was a doubt. I was put into doubt.
But you weren't saying that you wanted to leave.
Yeah, I know. But they didn't care. They put me into doubt. MAA at the time at Flag, I just told her, I was like, I'm not fucking doing this anymore. I'm not doing amends. And she's like, well, you have to get your act together. I'm like, what is it contributing if I'm not even allowed to finish the condition that I started?
What do you mean you're not allowed to finish?
She wouldn't sign it. I did everything. And she was like, oh, do more here. And I did that. I'll do, you know, change a little bit here. Okay. I did that. I was ready. I did absolutely everything. And I was doing everything for, I'd say 4 of the 5 of those months. I didn't want to be on staff at the end. I was like, just get me out of here. I just want to go home. I just want to go home. I want to go home. I want to transfer. I'll transfer to DC if I have to be near my family. I don't want to be here. I tell the auditor that I'm having these thoughts and, you know, this is just common for me. I've been having these for years, but I'm not going to do it. I mean, I'm thinking about it. And then they were like, oh, okay, well, you know, I'll get that information in the MAA. And then I'm pulled in and they're like, so we want to go over what you told the auditor. It says here that you were feeling suicidal. And I was like, yeah, no, but I've said that, you know, before. And they're like, oh, but you were like serious. We thought that was like old stuff. And I was like, oh, well, no, that's just been like my whole life. And they were like, oh, well, okay. Well, we're going to look at this and we'll let you know. Maybe an hour later, I get a call saying, you got to be out tonight. You have to find somewhere to stay tonight. You have to put all of the stuff from your hotel that you've had in there for fucking 5 months, all the like random shit I've accumulated, you know. I talked to my wife about it and she ends up the next day without telling me, calling my parents and telling them that I was having these thoughts. And this was sort of where now everyone knew that I didn't give a fuck, that I was like, done. And they were very sensitive now. They were very like in damage control. They were very in like, oh no, now this looks bad. You know, obviously not even just being kicked out of Flag because if I kill myself, it'll look bad for Flag, but that my family is now trying to gaslight me. My mom's saying, once you get up the bridge, you know, emotions aren't really what you think they are. But you'll see that. And I'm like, you were the least helpful person in the universe.
I mean, what she meant was that it's your body thetans that are making you have these thoughts.
Yeah.
It's not you. Right.
Yeah.
But did you know that at the time? Well, you wouldn't have, right?
No. Well, no, I had done I had been down that road. Like I had seen like the South Park episode and whatever. And I was like, it was when I was getting on the ship that I had to tell them, I was like, well, like, you know, we already kind of believe in aliens, so it wasn't crazy. But like, there's this whole like Xenu thing I saw on TV, and I looked into it, and it was LRH talking, and they just gaslit me into thinking that it's probably nothing, probably something I don't have context for in the future. Like, I'm not at a level of Scientology where it would make sense, but I don't know any better, so I'll just believe them. But they just lied to me, and my parents lied to me as well about that. But I routed off. I went back to Atlanta, packed my shit, did as much of the routing form as I could. And I just took all my shit and I went back to DC, and I had like the first like week to relax that I had had in years. And then I went to Australia, spent some time with my wife, Ruby. And then I started watching because I was like, I wasn't going to go in session anytime in the near future. So I to myself, I was like, well, I need a full perspective on this now because something's wrong. So I started watching I didn't want to know what the media said. I wanted to hear from Scientologists. So I watched like all the movies and all the interviews, and there were some that were just, a real discredit to the interviewee, like David Miscavige's father, which that was rough. The interview that he did with Joe Rogan.
Yeah, that was rough.
That was very rough. But I started to see now that Scientology was doing these things, and these contradictions that I saw in real life were the confirmations for these things that I was seeing outside. And I was sort of explaining this to my wife at the time, and she was empathetic until it came to the topic of Scientology, which I said, after I left, like a month or so or two had gone by, and I was still sort of figuring out what I wanted to do now that I was like not going back to Scientology, and I wanted to go to college and it was peak COVID, I think. So I wanted to do like online film school, and my mom was like, actually, $25,000 a year, that's too expensive, honey. I'm sorry, you might have to get you're just gonna have to pull yourself up and do that yourself. And then they proceeded to buy like a multi-million-dollar farm and fill it with ridiculously expensive like antique knickknacks and like a whole gun range, an old Western town they're building on, so that like my father, who's never touched a power tool in his life, can build a birdhouse in his new workshop. It's like it sets the perspective also that where his priorities are. Like I'm trying to move on in a way that, like, sure, yeah, my education was fucked up because I went to all these Scientology schools, but like I still had the idea that like, well, if I follow what I'm interested in, I'll figure it out. And so I dropped it. I was like, you know what? You're right. That does sound like a lot of money. I've never seen that much money in my life. I'm living with them at this point. We're in kind of like a vacuum chamber of them tiptoeing around me, but still trying to like manipulate me, and going on long walks where they can talk to me about, my dad can talk to me about how, son, I used to watch porn. Your mom didn't like it. And I'm like, sounds like your fucking problem, dude. I really would rather not be on this goofy ass golf course. Bringing up shit that like the only shit that they ever knew that was ever wrong. Like, the things that the buttons that they knew to push, maybe in the past, whether it be any past relationships that I've had, or things that I did that they thought were, degrading. I mean, that's something every Scientologist deals with. But at the end, he said, I feel like my reputation is bulletproof. And I kind of like it went in and just stayed. And I went home and I laid in bed and I was sitting there and I was like, realizing that he is going to grow, and he's going to get this popularity, and he's going to get success regardless of any bad things he does or that he supports. Like, there's a reason that my father does not appear in public often or respond publicly. After I left Scientology publicly, after I made those TikToks, and made a YouTube video, he stopped doing his live show uh, the way he was doing it before, and then started a pre-recorded, pre-selected live show where people are only allowed to talk about specific topics, and they have to be pre-selected. So he can funnel away all the Scientology stuff.
Oh, really?
And it's just, I mean, it's just like the same kind of cowardice that like Scientology does. But I mean, the confirmation bias, I guess, for me was when I stood my ground about like wanting to, be my own person, not to ask permission to live life, and not have to ask permission from a church to live life. And what about these interviews that the church denies exist or that I'm watching with my own eyes? Simple things that, why would the church even need to lie about that? Like, all these pieces are just coming together, and my brother doesn't have answers. His answers are, well, what LRH says about Black PR, or what LRH says about, it's like, I don't give a shit anymore. Nothing he said has helped me in the way that it was supposed to, in hindsight. Yeah. Being conditioned to sit in a room and hold my bladder for 6 to 7 hours at a time has come in handy here and there. Sure. It's not worth the PTSD, and it's not worth the flashbacks and and also at the end, talking to Ruby about it, I said, I don't want to raise my kids in Scientology. And she called me, and that's all I said. I was going to approach like a conversation about it. And she was, clearly she was appalled. She then just conveniently came up with this whole list of behaviors that, I had changed. I wasn't the man she married. I was this weird, like, I'm like, what overts must I be committing, or like what world must I be like diverting into, or what conspiracies am I buying into? You can be, you don't have to be a Scientologist, and you don't have to be in Scientology. They're only gonna come after you if you like go to the press. And in hindsight, that is funnier than it was at the time, because I couldn't really see the irony in it. But all I saw was a future where I was in parallel with this woman that I was in love with, who was, the only thing that was happening in her life was Scientology and all the great things Scientology was doing for her, allegedly. I mean, obviously that wasn't what was happening. She was ready to leave with me also, but she changed her mind very quickly. I remember her telling me at Flag that if they force us to not be together, like if they force us to separate after we had already been married, she would leave the church. But she conveniently forgot about that, because then I was like, all right, well, would you leave? Like, she was getting mad at me because I couldn't imagine, like, she couldn't imagine I just not be in Scientology. And then when I said, well, would you leave Scientology for me? She said no. So when I came out at the end and I made this TikTok, and I was at a very low place, and I decided, fuck it. I'll bring the whole fucking shit down with me. I had no idea that my life would change how it did. Still kind of, it's just gotten so spicy, people coming out of the woodwork and showing you who they truly are. And you live in this like new, more helpful place. Like, there are people who reach out to me all the time who tell me that, like, I saw your video and it inspired me to leave.
Were you already divorced by the time you put up your first TikTok on Scientology?
We had decided to do the divorce papers, yes. But she has since blocked me, so we were never really able to do that, which is great. Ruby, if you're watching this, if you want to get divorced, you just email me, because I don't have a phone number right now, but you have literally every means to contact me. So just whenever you want, or if you need help leaving, also hit me up. I'm good for that too.
You're still legally married.
Yeah.
Wow.
She lives 12,000 miles away.
And the church hasn't tried to facilitate a
That's
divorce.
the weirdest.
That's really surprising.
Or she hired this seemingly local attorney. I was contacted by this office, this like shitty website, and they it's really like we will be handling Miss Bromwell's divorce. She's filing for divorce papers, and because I didn't have a job at the time, I actually left. I was working for my dad, so I was no longer working for him after I left Scientology, because you have to be a Scientologist to work for my dad. So what it looked like was she hired like an attorney who was going to help send the papers, and they kept asking me for my address. And when I would respond with my address, they wouldn't respond after that. And when I would respond with clarification, they wouldn't respond. And days and days and days would go by. And then I moved, but I didn't have a legal address. So I gave them an address where I knew I could go pick it up. And they said they sent it, and they said it arrived, but it was nowhere to be found. And I said, hey, if you'd like to fix this, I tried to follow up several times, but I never got a response back from anybody. So it's very interesting. Somebody was just probing me with a legitimate reason for me to give them my current location and then just ghost me when I, trying to do something very, it's just things without trying to be as paranoid as, I was earlier, reasonable confusion and circumstance. It's like, that's suspicious. Is that really a lawyer? Because I feel like the lawyer would have also wanted to get this done. They just didn't.
Is it possible that the laws in Australia are such that if they file paperwork and don't get a response in a certain amount of time, that it's automatically the marriage is automatically dissolved? Like, is that a possibility?
That stands to, that logically, that makes sense. Like in a developed nation, I knew that eventually I would have to move, because the first thing that happened when I posted the video was my dad drove 4 hours from his farmhouse to my house to bang on my door for half an hour and scream at me to coerce me to get me to take the video down. I didn't answer the door. The neighbors ended up calling the police and telling him to leave. And that was pretty funny. I should have recorded it, but
what if the police have body cam footage of that? Did I lose you?
Oh, I heard every beautiful word you just said. The idea. Alexandria.
If the police had body cams when they showed up, you can submit a Freedom of Information Act request for, I want the footage. I want the footage from the officers who showed up at this location on this date between this time and this time, and they will give you the footage.
I actually have the exact date and time because he was texting me from outside my door. So I can definitely do that. I might. And I also was hearing through the grapevine all these different things, how they mysteriously, the whole family packed up and left the state for a month.
So even though you had, some crazy experiences, being mistreated within the organization at Flag and stuff like that, it seems like, based on what you've said, that it's actually your parents, your relationship with them is almost more what made you go, yeah, this is.
My parents were always sort of bumbling, hateful people, sort of doing everything incorrectly and wondering why their lives are so fucking awful. I didn't know any better at the time, so I had no idea what I was looking at. But I realized that they weren't interested in helping me figure it out, so I had to just go do my own thing. So I was neglected for like a huge portion of that. And when I got the impression at a very young age that they were already very tired from having 2 children, so that I was just there. That's why there weren't like a lot of pictures of me as a kid, and they didn't really try as hard, and they didn't like pay attention to me as much, is because I was the third one, and they were just exhausted. So I already felt like a burden. You just get this idea that your parents, or I'm sorry, I got this idea that my parents didn't like me. So my association with Scientology and leaving had to do when I intersected in Scientology professionally, when I became more knowledgeable in Scientology than my parents. That's when I started to realize that not only are they below me in this social sort of stance, in this capability, and that's what they're doing. That's why they get hateful and violent, is because they don't have like that capacity to reach that level of like human interaction, that like it has to be violent, it has to be hot or cold. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be like them if I keep going on this road. And I didn't want to do that.
When you were young, did you go by Berg, or has it always been Rafalco?
Yeah, my grandfather on my mom's side, his name was Henry Rafalco. He was a really positive guy when I was growing up. One of the few people I actually really enjoyed being around. When he died, and my mom just she didn't want to do anything with the name. Most of the people on my mom's side are mostly dead. So, and I didn't really feel like a Berg at all. And Berg is a kind of a goofy last name. When I wanted to be a actor, director guy, when I was really like getting into that earlier on, I was like, I need a stage name. So I was just going to be Ian Rafalco. And then I kind of just realized to, pay him respect. And then just kind of stuck for me. And I never legally changed it because my dad told me that if I changed my name, he would cut me out of the will. And I had nothing. I was like, damn, if I'm getting anything, it's going to be that fucking whatever's in his will. But he's I'm sure I cut myself right out of that will anyway.
So you were going by Rafalco well before you left Scientology.
Yeah, socially. I mean, names are names, but yeah, it was more of like I liked it more and meant a little bit more than Berg did. I was already being forced to be in a cult, so being forced to be a Berg felt like overkill. Also, Berg, it's like it just does not roll off the tongue well.
So, has the church reached out to try to handle you at all? Have you been approached by anybody? Contacted by any of those people?
I've been the internet trolling that they do is probably the most contact I get, because it's very specific and it's very obvious. And like, I'll just get these comments on my YouTube or my TikTok. It'll be like, oh, haha, we love you. Anyway, tell us more about the Scientologists who are reaching out to you. Haha, we love you. And it's like, you on my main account want me to talk about, you want me to expose people who I know who reach out to me because they don't want to go public about Scientology, but they still want to. Yeah, no thanks, Osa. So it's just it's just like a funny, like, it boggles my mind how simple these people are. But that's the most contact I get. I've tried many times actually to have a even reasonable conversation with any member of my family. And they run and they block me. And my sister reached out to me recently, told me to stop being a sheep, which I thought was just wholly ironic. And when I responded, before I could respond, she had already blocked me. So, it's like it's this little, like, throwing a rock out the window, then slamming it shut, kind of like, I caught the rock. I'm willing to have a conversation. It's just, I know from personal experience that you're afraid to confront the topics that we have to climb over this hill, because it might change your mind. If everyone in my life is so afraid of having a conversation with me that they have to block me before I'm even able to respond once, I must be saying something right, something that like actually makes an impact. I need people to know that the optical illusion that is Scientology as a big, strong corporate entity is like very not that way. They are cowardly.
Even in the community here, one
Mhm.
thing that OSA does, particularly Lisa Mansell, she talks to non-Scientologists in the community negatively about other non-Scientologists in the community. Like, oh yeah, this person, he just doesn't like us because we're like, she'll talk shit about but she'll never talk to the person themselves.
Never,
She'll never be like,
ever.
hey, I want to talk to you, I want to handle you and figure out what your problem is. No, it's just
Yeah.
chatter all over everywhere else.
You know, when I first left, I was like, oh, if I see any Scientologists on the street, I'm going to fall to pieces. But now, oh boy, I hope the second I ever land in Florida again, I have a small little party waiting for me. I just like, I'm not going to say what I'm going to do because I want them to be genuinely surprised. But
what year would that have been? What year was that you were last at Flag?
it was like 2022? It was probably 2019.
Okay. So just for the sake of documenting it, how many Sea Org members would you guess were on staff at Flag when you were there?
Now this is the reason I'm going to give you this number is because we did the photo shoot. I was there when they did the all SO photo shoot where everyone stood outside and they had the big drone shot. And when they show in the events, when they show like outside in Clearwater, the thousands of people, all these Sea Org members, that's just everyone. That's staff that are visiting, OOTs, obviously in the back, so you can't make them out, but it looks bigger, and Sea Org members. And I think it was about, at the time, which this was about early 2018, I think, it was like 2,300 total in Clearwater. But I knew that there weren't.
But now, so let me.
That was what I was told.
Well, I'll say it back to you to make sure I've understood it correctly. So, local staff members, that I'm going to guess that includes Tampa, that includes Bel Air. The Sea Org members who work on the Flag base, and out-org trainees from all over the world, whether they're staff members or Sea Org.
Yeah, so minus them, I'd say it's probably somewhere around like, at the time it was like a little over 1,000, because I don't think they could have inflated that number, maybe 1,500. Like they pulled everybody it was like a photo, so it was like a whole day. You know,
Did it include any public?
It was closed off to the public. Most things were, because we were funneled right from the mess hall in the bottom of the Flag building, underground, out the back into that lot. They had already put walls up, I think, where they were going to put where they wanted to put where they said they were going to put L. Ron Hubbard Hall, like right on that.
Yeah, the lot between the Flag building and where the buses are and the parking structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so how many public would you say were on lines at Flag when you were
there? The last time I was there was just before COVID started, and there were a lot of foreign people entering the country from Asia, and also a lot of Italian public, judging on the course rooms and how full they were. Maybe like 250 public, like intermittently. I mean, I wasn't in the HGC, but like, Friday night graduation, they were having a hard time filling it at the end.
Well, I mean, usually they fill it with staff and Sea Org members as well. But like, if you had to guess how many public they're able to round up to come to Flag graduation on a Friday night. And the reason I use that as a measure is because if you're an out of town public coming here for services, you're going to graduation.
Right.
If you're a local and you live here, you may or may not.
Sure.
But it at least gives you a measure. Like if they're not filling up, the problem with talking about whether the Flag auditorium gets filled up is you can always fill it up with Sea Org members.
I could tell you who was. I was there for 11 months. I could tell you who was staff and who was Sea Org and who was public. And the public who because I saw all of these people. I'm a faces person. I'm, a pretty good memory for certain things, especially for faces. People had their spots and they organized it how they did, but I'd say you would only really get public in the first 7 or so rows of the center aisle, because either other side, I guess, or the other aisle could have been of AO public, but it doesn't even fill that much anymore because it's
So not even 500 public.
yeah, like no, not even remote, like there, and sometimes, and because it was every Friday, sometimes people just didn't come on a slow Friday, but we went because we were supposed to, and we were obligated to, if we did finish something, go up on stage and raise it and smile. And we were like, if you wanted to go up, you had to sign it, and then they had to drill you. If you completed something, they would write your script for what you said. You would write something, and they would just like take it and write something else, and then you would say that, obviously giving the whole spiel, thanking LRH, thanking COB. I remember when I asked my brother, or another thing that kind of tipped me off the edge was it was after I decided to leave, but I was still working for my dad. A friend of mine, Dylan, who I was on the Layer Mini podcast with, was, he's a rowdy boy. I knew he was causing trouble no matter what, but I had heard that he was getting declared. And I talked to him about it, and I was like, what happened? And he told me, and I was like, okay, well, that doesn't sound like he should be declared. And my brother told me about it. And then when he didn't get my confirmation that I had blocked him, a few weeks later, he went to Flag to start his Elledge for 7, OT7, that is. So like doing all the sec checking and the FPRD that's needed, and like the courses or whatever for doing that. He texted me, and I had never in my life seen my older brother, so like scared and like desperately hoping that I would say the right things, and that I wouldn't like betray him in this way of like, I don't want it to seem like I'm, like this, but like, how it goes. And, they're not going to let me on OT7, if you don't disconnect from him. And it's going to be, I'd never seen him like this. It was just like breaking down. And I was like, okay, obviously I'm not going to do that, but let me pretend that I do. And I told him that I did. And he's like, oh, thank you. This is like means the world to me. And so we went, and then about a month later, I think, is when I came out with the TikTok. But it's just all the different things that happen to you as a Scientologist, all the signs that you get. You'll remember them. All those little points of, being told when I was a child that, I was broken by my mother, and that she needed to send me to the org to fix me. For her, it was probably another Tuesday, but these are things that like gradually led to my leaving. And obviously the explanation is always the longest part. So the last video I made it was more of like what happened, but not like why. It's good to be able to describe the context.
I recorded earlier today a reaction video to the Michaela Arrington stuff that she posted on TikTok.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, one of the things I reacted to is she mentioned in her video that there's 11,000 Scientology organizations and millions of Scientologists.
The good old,
yeah, well, in the video I go, she actually believes that, even though the evidence that it's not true is right in front of her face. She can't see it because of the cult mindset. And I'm mentioning that because the numbers that you just mentioned for Flag, the last time I was at Flag was probably 2010 or 11, very latest 2012. I was on course in the Coachman. I was also training at Flag. The last time as a staff member in 1998 was the last time I was there. Even though Scientology keeps buying more property and buying more property and buying more property, Flag has not expanded over the last 20 years.
they've been buying buildings. We know, like, I've been hearing about all the buildings that are being bought, like the
Oh yeah,
the Chase
they bought a shitload of
the
buildings.
SunTrust building. They bought that a
Yeah, they
few
bought
years
that years
ago.
ago.
Did fuck all with it. No plans,
They've
no nothing.
they've been evicting. They've been evicting
Yeah.
slowly, evicting the non-Scientologist tenants there. But like the number
Well, they
of
legally
public,
had to give them like 2 years to. They had to give all the people legally. They had to give them 2 years to vacate before they did anything with the property. Like they
but there's
had,
but
they
they're still but they're still renewing leases for Scientologists. They're not renewing leases for non-Scientologists.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, no,
but the
they haven't
number
done
of
anything with it. I don't think it's like an apartment building. I think it's like a business. They said they were going to do something admin with it, but then that's like what they say about every fucking random building. They
well, no,
slap a
what
Scientology
they've
logo
done with
on.
it was they kept it what it already was, which is a commercial office building. So, but they keep renewing the leases for Scientologist-owned companies, but not renewing the leases for non-Scientologist-owned companies.
Oh, there are people like still in business in there.
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I didn't know that.
Know Before and
But
Stu Showerman have 2 or 3 floors of the building.
but they have their own building also.
Yeah, but they've outgrown it and they've moved over to the SunTrust building.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
That's so
But the
funny.
number of public who are on Corset Flag, the number
Yeah.
of SEERD members who are staff members at the base, has not expanded over the last 20 years. And I'm mentioning that as an
Yeah.
example of one of the role that Flag plays is it's the one place where Miscavige can continue to create this mirage that Scientology is expanding. And yet, even at Flag, the only thing that's expanded is the buildings. There's not more Scientologists.
Yeah. No, not at all. What you have to understand is like pageantry does impress, especially when it comes to architecture. So what they did was they made this really, honestly, very beautiful building. I mean, like now I look at it, it's kind of, it's not so beautiful now, but at the time, you walk in and you're like, holy shit, everything's clean. There's always like a foreign person who doesn't speak English on scrubbing the tiles. They always put I noticed the least conversationally active on the janitorial work. All the people that are like, join the Sea Org in Moscow or something, and they're like, how I help? And they say, oh, you're going to Flag to scrub shit out of the toilets for the next fucking 40 years. And but we'll pay for your bridge when we let you get it at some point later. Like, you look at this place and you're like, shit's, and people are like moving around and everyone's like, when you're in that mindset, it tricks you. It's just another layer of the illusion that kind of brings you in. And the way they structure the course rooms and the schedules makes it look like, and the corridors, long, narrow corridors that, really fit only 2 rows of people. So when 13 course rooms get out for break, yeah, it looks like there's a shitload of people, but it's not really as big. It's not as big to justify an increase of number. It's like the logic there doesn't make sense. We're actually losing PCs in the internship constantly at the end. It was impossible to find anyone who would stay or who wanted internship auditing. Impossible for any auditors to not only be trained because they kept fucking up, but like they didn't have PCs to audit. So they would just give you a superpower auditor or give you somebody who hasn't done that thing in the Sea Org, a new Sea Org member. And you would audit them and finish your requirements for the internship. And assists also count in your hour quota, which I saw a guy who did like 115 hours of nerve assist. And that was really funny. He's like, I did that. We did a 2-hour nerve assist. She never told me she was okay. I just kept telling her to flip. She never gave me a cognition, so I just kept going for 2 hours. And she didn't have any exams because we had been doing a 2-hour assist, and then she got red tagged, so we had to do it again at the end of the day. And it was like, and those like moments, you're like wrapped up in like this, camaraderie of the topic, but it's, that's the problem. It's like you're distracted from this real like lack of accountability. and harmful actions towards, like, I was told when I was a kid that my best friend, the only friend who I had down the street who happened to be gay, he was aberrated and he was like a bad guy. And although I could hang out with him, this is what you should think about him. And I apologized to him years later when I had all these realizations, because it's like, I just did that to him without thinking about it, and without taking that into consideration because of Scientology. It is not harmless, and that is kind of my whole point, is like, there are layers to it, but it's a real problem. It's hilarious sometimes because they are a very goofy and energetic bunch, but it's very fucked.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's dying down a lot. People I knew in Atlanta are leaving. Staff members were leaving. We're leaving Atlanta. We were at like 15 staff when I left Atlanta. Because people just stopped showing up, and people were like arguing with the org because the org wasn't paying them, so they would just declare them instead and send them packing. So to your point on that little last bit, there is a lot of people leaving.
Definitely. Well, also with, you being public and other people come out and being public, and even people secretly being public.
Yeah, that's fun.
More and more people. I mean, it's inevitable. The demise of the membership of Scientology is inevitable. Whether the organization will ever be forced to divest of assets is probably dependent on whether they lose the tax exempt status, which is something that I believe will eventually occur. I do.
Yeah.
But it's fine. It'll take care of itself in due time. In the meantime, we can help speed up the process.
Yeah, exactly. Like you never realize how, I just never realized how fragile Scientology was until I started talking about it, and until I started hearing from Scientologists' reactions. And it's like, well, more can be said. I think, the question is like, why take my family down? It was another question that I get from my TikToks. Like, people, I guess, with good family relationships are curious as to why I wouldn't just forgive my family. But it's not even about that. It's a very simple fact that right now my family is, supporting a very dangerous group, and they are victims of it. But I mean, mainly my mother and father are, I guess, the two in my family who are sort of propagating and funding this Scientology lifestyle. But, my brother and sister, it's hard to know where they'll end up or what kind of people they're going to be if they stay in, especially because I have a niece who is, barely even going to school. And apparently there's another one on the way. So, it's thinking about the future, thinking about my future family that's going to be in Scientology.
All right. Well, let me know when you want to do it again, and we certainly will. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a good night.